Hello again everyone, I'm majicDave and this is Sapiens. It's been 2 weeks since my last video and I've done a whole bunch since then, lots of little bits and pieces, so yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to show you is the user interface for interacting with things. So before there used to be this is the build menu, but it used to be when you clicked on an object you'd get sort of a big panel like this with a few buttons on it, and that was just a placeholder really for me to try to figure out what's even going to happen when you click on something. But I've got that kind of more locked in now, so I thought it was time to introduce a more kind of contextual sort of smaller impact menu with sort of fast interactions, because you're going to be wanting to queue up these things a lot, so you can kind of really quickly just go in and go a particular direction, queue up different actions. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. It feels nice. It's quick to use and it's just much nicer to use than it was. So this uses my 3D user interface. So this is a 3D model, and I thought I'd take advantage of that by actually making it rotate a little bit in and out. It has to be really fast because you don't want it to take any kind of amount of time really, but it means that it just provides a little bit of extra, feedback on which choice that you chose, because it rotates away depending on where you click, and also it just looks kind of cool. So one of the things that I've worked on is the ability to carry multiple objects. So this was something that I just started when I recorded the last video and it wasn't really working right. But now when they have a few orders around them, they can pick up multiple things and they sort of pick them up, carry them all in a nice pile, and then drop them all off one by one. So we've got different animations depending on the object type. So she's carrying multiple branches. She's the same thing, but she's got them carrying them on her shoulder. And this is also working across all the different kinds of times where they'll need to carry multiple objects. So if a building needs multiple things, then they will go off and look for multiple things. They basically, if they've picked up one resource and they know that whatever they're doing requires more, then if another resource is nearby and it's closer than the kind of destination, then they'll go and pick that up too. And it's working really well. It looks really natural. It actually feels a lot better to play. Like, I kind of knew that this would have a positive impact on the game, but I didn't realize actually how much of a positive impact it would have. Yeah, so I'm really happy with that. So I've also worked on these sort of impossible markers is what I'm calling them. So how the markers turn red when you can't do something. So these logs are red because you can't store them. There's nowhere allocated yet. There aren't enough storage areas free, and all of these are taken. So if I then also go to this apple tree and say gather apples, then the marker here is also red. And so that's new. So I mean, technically they could go and pick the apples, but there's nowhere to store them. And so I thought it would make more sense for those sorts of actions where you don't want them to just come and throw all these apples on the ground. So it makes more sense to actually wait until you've got somewhere to put them. Okay, so now that I've created a storage area over there for these apples. So now he's picking the apples, and the apples actually fall now with a store order already in place. So that's another new thing. So now they don't just sort of fall there and wait for you to have to queue them up individually or anything. It's all just one kind of nice, and he's hungry, so he's eating one. But yeah, it's a nice sort of seamless way to pick the resources that are nearby. And now, with all of this stuff combined, there's a really positive impact to actually bothering to do that as a player. If you go and you sort of make the effort to queue up a few of these gather commands, then you'll see the benefit, because you guys won't be constantly wandering off and getting those single fruits. So I've also been working a lot on the building kind of process, on snapping and how you place buildings and stuff. It probably wasn't all that clear in the last video that actually these houses are made up of individual sections which you can sort of place as you like, and so you're not limited to just a little square building. You can build things sort of how you want, and I'll probably actually allow you to have finer grained control than this also. So I think these are this will be the sort of largest wall sections that you'll be able to place, but there'll also be smaller sections to allow you to do sort of more creative things. I've also now made it so that these markers will turn red if the resources are not available. So all of that's sort of working. A lot of this stuff, it's what takes a lot of the time, because figuring out that that there were not enough resources nearby for a given thing. It needs to be super fast. It needs to be checked all the time. And if more resources become available somewhere, then it needs to be updated. And, I had issues with a resource that was carried was marked as unavailable, and therefore the building structure would think that it was no longer possible, even though someone was carrying the last item that needed to be placed there. There's all these sorts of little issues that you have to sort of work through. So it's good to have kind of got a lot of them kind of done. And yeah, I mean, this is I'm right in the middle of the game development process now. This is there's a lot of these sorts of things that have to be worked out. And it's a huge amount of work, but that's what it's all about. So these thatch building sections have also had quite a bit of work. You might have noticed they're now being built in horizontal slices. This was actually a suggestion that I saw in Discord. So yeah, I really liked that idea. It was sort of more natural, and it helped sort of hide some of the seams and stuff. So I've actually pretty much got it seamless now. That took quite a lot of figuring out just how, this is still getting rendered in these 6 different sections. That's something that people have suggested, once it's finished you can just swap out that model with a full model of the whole wall, but I can't actually do that because I want this thatch to be able to be a number of different materials. At the moment this is all hay, but I want there to be able to be kind of reeds that you could gather, and I want palm leaves or the like to be able to be used as well. So they would have different looks, and if you ended up mixing and matching them, I want it to actually show that they are different materials. And that's how it's all working with the branches and things too. And I just think it's kind of a cool thing. So if I can keep these in separate modular bits that sort of snap together and stay that way, then that's the best result. Okay, so the other thing that I've been working on over the last few days is the placing of individual items. So these will not actually be in the build menu, these rocks and branches and logs. They'll probably be in a separate interface or in another tab or something where you're placing items. And so if I go to place this branch, I can now place a branch anywhere in the world. So I'll just put one there for now. So that's just like the kind of other building mechanic, and that someone actually now has to bring a branch and put it there. So that alone wouldn't be much use. So I've also added the ability to rotate objects around. So you can rotate them freely with keys at the moment. I'm not sure on what the final interface will be, but I'm actually quite liking this as it is. So you can move it up and down, you can move it offset it left and right, you can rotate it in either around the y-axis or around its sort of local z-axis. And yeah, it's working quite well. So you can sort of use that to build little fences, and if you want, you can sort of make them a little bit more random or whatever. And it's relatively quick, and it gives you full control. Now, when I started doing this, I got this far and I thought, wow, this is really, really great. But then I started building strange sort of structures where you can sort of place things in odd little formations like this. And it really got me thinking about, well, how do I deal with that? Do I want to deal with that? Is that a problem? And ultimately I've kind of decided, no, I really like the power that you have to be able to build what you want. And I think that power is probably more important than super realistic physics. But I did decide that what I didn't want was people to be able to just place something in midair just completely floating. So it goes red if it's not touching anything. And it's as long as it's touching something that the player has actually placed, some built structure, then it's good. The trees don't count because that someone could come and chop those down, and I didn't want to leave floating things in that case. Bushes don't count, but yeah, any kind of built structure, it just has to be touching. So I think the ability to do this is just really gonna improve the way that you can customize your world and how much freedom you're gonna have. I'm quite excited about it. I think it's just a really nice feature. The interface for placing this stuff is quick, and how quickly they build it is also really good. And at the moment, all you can place are these 3 things. You know, there's going to be a lot more different kinds of things that you can place in the world. And yeah, it's just, people are going to be able to make all sorts of crazy things, you know, structures and sculptures and things. And yeah, it's really cool. So I just wanted to mention also that these roof sections no longer have the end pieces, and again, it's all a work in progress. I'm thinking about making those separate so that you can place them where you want, and you could maybe have a few different styles of them and things. So yeah, we're just still thinking about all of that stuff. So on top of all of that, in the last video, I noticed when I was watching it back and editing it that there was a log just floating quite high up in midair. That can still happen sometimes if one rests on another and you take away the one underneath. But this was different. This was something kind of fairly major. And so I started looking into it and testing it. And I actually discovered a number of bugs in the physics. So I spent a couple of days there just really sorting out all of the issues in the physics. It was all to do with how I'd sort of changed everything so that the trees were using cones and stuff. When I actually investigated it, the cones were upside down, and so stuff would fall onto the base of the cone in the tree and then just kind of cause all sorts of problems. So those are all sorted now, and I've actually tidied up huge amounts of all of that code, and I'm feeling really good about it actually. It feels pretty robust. There was also issues with when objects, when they're falling, they're in a dynamic state, and when they turned into a static state, that was where some of the issues were, and all of that stuff is now resolved. So that's great. I just wanted to show you also what I do to test all of this sort of physics stuff. So this is just making it so that you can gather infinite resources from a single place, and they'll just keep doing it until they fall asleep. So yeah, it's pretty robust. It's working quite well. But anyway, so it's been extremely productive couple of weeks. It's been very draining mentally, and I think that this is pretty much what my next 6 months are going to be. Just lots of really, really hard work, but good progress too. It's coming along, you can kind of see where things might go from here. So I'm not even going to hazard a guess at what I'm going to work on in the next 2 weeks. I've got so many things on my to-do list, it's just a matter of picking what I feel like working on. So I guess we'll just wait and see. Once again, please go and wishlist Sapiens on Steam, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of my devlog videos, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.